North Korea claims it has successfully tested a hydrogen bomb, a device which can be loaded onto a long-range ballistic missile.
North Korea's nuclear program has its roots in the 1950s. With the help of the Soviet Union, North Korea trained personnel and established nuclear reactors for the purpose of energy. In the 1960s, however, North Korea expanded its nuclear program to include both civilian and military applications. The early 1980s through to the early 1990s sees the growth, then eventual suspension of North Korea's domestic nuclear production program. In the 1980s, North Korea sees significant progress in the nuclear field. The construction of a uranium milling facility, fuel rod fabrication complex, and experimenting on trigger mechanisms used for nuclear bombs are a few examples of this progress. A major accomplishment was the construction of a factory at Yongbyon, which was used to produce fuel for reactors and refine yellow cake, which is a uranium concentrated powder. In 1985, North Korea signed the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or NPT, as a non-nuclear weapon state. After the full withdrawal of all US nuclear weapons from South Korea on December 1991, South Korea and North Korea went on to sign the Joint Declaration on the Denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, whereby both sides promised they would, quote, not test, manufacture, produce, receive, possess, store, deploy, or use nuclear weapons. The agreement additionally bound the two sides to forego the possession of nuclear reprocessing and uranium enrichment facilities. The agreement also provided for a bilateral inspections regime. However, the two sides failed to agree on its implementation. In 1992, North Korea signed an International Atomic Energy Agency Safeguards Agreement. Under the terms of this agreement, North Korea had to provide access to IAEA inspectors. 6 rounds of inspections were conducted, starting in 1992 and ending in 1993. The analysis found evidence of plutonium reprocessing. The inspectors were also denied access to suspected nuclear waste sites. After being denied access to certain areas in the previous inspections, the IAEA asked the UNSC to authorize ad hoc inspections. In reaction, North Korea announced its withdrawal from the NPT. North Korea later suspended their withdrawal while continuing talks with Washington. The talks dragged on and worsened over time. The situation was diffused in 1994 when former US President Jimmy Carter traveled to Pyongyang to meet Kim Il-sung. Kim agreed to a deal later finalized as the Agreed Framework. Under the agreement, North Korea agreed to freeze work at its gas graphite moderated reactors and related facilities. The freeze was also to be monitored by the IAEA. Pyongyang also agreed to take steps to implement the North-South Joint Declaration on the Denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And finally, they were to remain a party of the NPT.
Now the question arises, what is the reason behind DPRK's eager commitment to develop the nuclear armaments? By logic, simply, it is reasonable why DPRK played along with the rhythm of arms race. The center of all policies, both foreign and domestic, belongs to Kim Jong-un as the Marshal of the DPRK. He believes at least under 2 circumstances, DPRK needs to develop its nuclear arms. First concern is the influence of international community. This relate to what United States did as the main actor that influenced the foreign connection between DPRK and the international community. Kim Jong-un believes that by looking to what happened in Middle East, with the case of Libya, case of Iraq and Afghanistan, obtaining strong form of armaments will prevent DPRK from being intervened by other states through a hard power, which in reality it is controversially fruitful. Apparently, DPRK's paranoid thoughts about the United States of America is also natural, since DPRK is a relic of Cold War that sided with communist perspective. Another actor is still relevant to foreign concern. However, unlike its paranoid fear to the USA, DPRK and South Korea are still in war, or at least in ceasefire, till today. Simple logic will fit easily when a party is involved directly in a conflict. It will strive to improve itself in order to win or at least to survive. Additional idea why Marshal Kim Jong-un managed to develop its armament is simply due to his own characteristic of being careful and strict. Due to internal concern of DPRK political flow, it is also natural if one leader may possess a colossal power of weaponry. Basically, DPRK's armament under Kim Jong-un protects both the regime and the sovereignty of himself and the DPRK. Second is the concern of economic development, which is also natural due to DPRK's less competence to significantly develop its own natural resources or manpower or any economical resources to a competitive pace. Therefore, the main aspect that DPRK could and should put its focus on are technology and infrastructure. This can be seen by the fear of economic sanctions like embargo or funding cuts by the United States of America and India.
North Korea has conducted its nuclear weapon tests since Kim Il-sung era and now become more intensive in Kim Jong-un regime. The first test was in February 2013. Pyongyang used miniature and lightweight nuclear devices with greater explosive strength than Kim Jong-il era. Experts in Japan, South Korea, and US at that time recorded the vibration of artificial earthquakes in the area Punggye-ri, magnitude between 4.7 Richter scale to 5.2 Richter scale. The second test was in September 2016. This test caused a 5.3 magnitude earthquake tremor. The explosive force is about 10 kilotons or 10 times stronger than previous nuclear weapon tests. And last year, in September 3, 2017, Kim Jong-un retested their nuclear weapon, and this test, the strongest test throughout their trials, where an earthquake measuring 6.3 is on the Richter scale. Earthquake vibrations are detected in the Ryuju area where the Punggye-ri nuclear test site is located. But the vibration of the earthquake also felt in the region of Sumatra, Indonesia. This type of hydrogen nuclear test became the first thing for President Donald Trump's government. Its power reached 100 kilotons, which is stronger than US atomic bomb ever dropped in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Japan at the end of World War II. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the nuclear test makes regional security very unstable and trigger a World War III, and he again urged Pyongyang to stop the action. United States continued to push the United Nations Security Council to impose tough sanctions on North Korea. United States proposed a draft resolution that asking for an oil embargo for North Korea, a risk on North Korea-led asset Kim Jong-un, as well as ban of the textile industry and stop payments for North Korea workers abroad.
In order to prevent the DPRK nuclear weapons activities, there are several actions and international documents that have been done, such as the first Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons in 1968. This treaty passed in order to address the growing concern over the danger nuclear war could pose to the international community. In cooperation and collaboration with the International Atomic Energy Agency, member states agreed to ensure that nuclear technology is applied peacefully. The treaty as a whole guides states on the development and use of nuclear technology. Second, Comprehensive Nuclear Ban Treaty in 1996.
Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly and opened for signature in September 1996. The CTBT bans all nuclear test explosions. It aims at prevention of nuclear proliferation and ultimately at nuclear disarmament.
The third, Six-Party Talks. Aimed at ending North Korea's nuclear program, six parties, China, United States, Japan, North Korea, South Korea, and Russia, came together in 2003 to negotiate about the nation's persistent missile test and other provocations of nuclear agreements. Most importantly, these talks began as a result of North Korea's withdrawal from the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons in 2002. In regards to the negotiations, each party has objectives other than to dismantle North Korea's nuclear program. Along with the objectives, each of the parties involved play a different role. Traditionally, Russia and China have played significant role in bringing North Korea to the negotiating table. Further, China specifically has a prominent role in facilitating these talks. Meanwhile, South Korea and the United States, as well as Japan, consistently refuse to meet with North Korea unless the nation meets the criteria for resumption of the talks. Since the end of the Korean War, the United States has continued to impose sanctions on North Korea. These sanctions have included an arms embargo, economic sanctions, and restrictions on trade and travel. Such sanctions have led to the increased actions by the U.S. against North Korea. In particular, the U.S. attacked Banco Delta Asia, a Chinese bank in Macau that North Korea has used for years. Under pressure from the U.S., banking authorities in Macau froze $25 million in North Korea funds. Such actions hit North Korea hard, primarily leading the international community to cut off all ties with the nation. The primary objective of this move by the U.S. was to pressure North Korea into halting its nuclear program and normalize its relation with the state itself and other neighboring nations. After this action in September, North Korea backed out of the denuclearization talks in November 2005. By 2006, the talks started to fall apart. As a result, North Korea increased its provocations, testing a long-range rocket and holding the first underground nuclear explosion. The long-range rocket test in a few months after the Banco Delta Asia incident led to condemnation by the international community. Both the US and Japan had urged North Korea to adhere to the moratorium on long-range missile after 1999. Departing from the moratorium, this test, as some analysts suggest, is an effort by North Korea to redirect attention to the denuclearization aside from North Korea. China had continued to pressure the nation into rejoining the talks. By 2007, the denuclearization talks resumed. In exchange for fuel assistance from the other parties, North Korea would begin denuclearization. Further, North Korea would start to have normalized relations once more with the United States and Japan. Still, despite these agreements, North Korea continues to be unpredictable. Between 2008 and 2009, North Korea has started the denuclearization program. However, criteria set by the US and other parties have not been met. As a result, this has often led to more sanctions set by both the US and the UN Security Council. In considering these moments of progress and defiance, the question of whether the six-party talks has truly made and progress remains.
On the beginning of this year, DPRK showed a positive reaction to the international community. The government of DPRK made a rare announcement to all Koreans calling for a unification of the North and the South for a more peaceful Korean peninsula. The announcement came after a joint meeting of government and political parties. Koreans are expected to promote cooperation between the North and the South. Military tension has been standing in the way of peaceful inter-Korean relations. Leader Kim Jong-un is very optimistic that this year is meaningful for both North and South Korea. Furthermore, this March, North Korea took its most significant step toward defusing its nuclear standoff with the US, telling Seoul it was open to negotiation over ending its weapon program and will suspend its contentious testing regime while talks were underway. The statement was made on an unprecedented meeting in Pyongyang. However, a top North Korean diplomat at the United Nations said in October 2017 his country will not put nuclear weapon on negotiating table unless the hostile policy and the nuclear threat of US is truly eradicated. On April 2018, South Korea confirmed that it had been in talk with the American and North Korean official about negotiating a peace treaty to formally end the Korean War after more than 60 years, as the United States and its allies try to establish a basis for persuading the North to give up its nuclear weapon. Chung Eui-yong, the national security advisor to President Moon Jae-in of South Korea, said he had discussed the matter with John R. Bolton, his newly appointed American counterpart in Washington last week, as they prepare for the planned talk between each of their country's president and Kim Jong-un. South Korea officials said that they had also been in talk with the North about a possible treaty. Mr. Trump said that a peace treaty was being discussed and he approved the idea. The president confirmed that he had sent Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, to meet with Mr. Kim. It said that he would meet with the North Korean leader in May or early June, after Mr. Kim April 27 talked with South Korea President Mr. Moon on the Korean border.